This episode of the A-List podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Welcome into the A-List podcast. As usual, the crew is back together again. Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis. Thank you, first of all, for tuning in to the pod. Let's just get right into it. We're looking forward to the Celtics game against the Bucks, and I want to hear your first reaction to that.
This is the game that for weeks we've been looking forward to. It's not going to have nearly as much drama or intrigue as we would like with the Celtics. You know, a couple games and some change behind Milwaukee. But I do think this game has the potential to give us a little bit insight into this Celtics team going into the playoffs. Because the one thing we've seen of late, and Gary can probably attest to this, the better their opponent, the better they tend to play. And we'll find out against the Milwaukee Bucks, can they continue that trend and play their best basketball against, arguably the best team in the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I feel like the importance of the game has been dampened a little bit by them losing to Washington. That was a really bad loss. We can talk about that. But I still think they want to show their best against the Bucks. They want to win the season series. You don't know what's going to happen. I'm not saying that they got a chance at they're going to get the number one seed, but the Bucks still have a game left with Memphis. They still have a game with Toronto. They still could lose two more games. So you just don't want to mail this one in and give this one up and go, okay, please beat us, Milwaukee. Because who knows what's going to happen in the Wednesday Bucks game, where they probably will rest some guys to prepare for the Thursday game. They might not play Giannis in a back-to-back. So you don't know what's going to happen. And the Celtics really messed themselves up by kind of laying down against Washington, But I do think it's still an important game. You want to get that game, and you want to get that game against Philly. Go all out and get those two games, and then you can figure out what to do with the other 4 games that you have left.
That being said, what do you think is a better landing spot right now? We've talked about this actually last week, but where do you think is the most out? And we also talked about them potentially chasing back to number one. Not sure if they're on that trajectory just yet, but what do you think is the best landing spot for the Celtics right now?
I think the best landing spot is the best possibility for them to move through the playoffs. I think the number 2 spot at this point is realistically where they're going to wind up, and is the most likely end result once we get to the playoffs that they'll be in. And when you look at that 2 spot, you've got a handful of teams that they could see. I personally would love for them to play Atlanta right in that opening round. 1, because for purely selfish reasons, I love me some ATL, number 1. But number 2, if you're the Celtics, I think that's the easiest path for you to get out of the first round. Of the 4 or 5 teams that you'll be talking about as a potential 7th seed, you're talking about Brooklyn, Atlanta. The Knicks may possibly fall there. Toronto, they've gotten caught a little bit. They've won, I think, 3 or 4 in a row, something like that. Of all those teams that are kind of jumbled up as a potential 7th seed, I think Atlanta is the weakest of the bunch. And if you're the Celtics, you know that your goal isn't to just move from one round to the next. Your goal is to be the last team standing. And you know that journey involves playing teams that, frankly, you have no control over who you play. But if you did, I think Atlanta would be the team that almost every team with home court advantage in the first round would want to see in that first round matchup.
I think the best, obviously, you want to get the number 2 seed because you don't want to play potential second round series of Philadelphia without home court advantage. So they're going to need to keep that seed. Like, they can't, people are like, well, they should just rest everybody for the rest of the season, but then you're going to get caught by Philly potentially and be the 3rd seed. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is get the number 2 seed. Hey, you wanted home court throughout the playoffs. Now you've got to understand that you're going to play the first 2 games in Milwaukee, potentially of a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals, but you got to get there first. It all depends on how this play-in turns out. You got a lot of teams in there. Chicago, it's pretty much set with Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and oh boy, what's the other team? That's in
Toronto.
Huh?
You think Toronto?
Toronto, Miami, Atlanta. I know Brooklyn is 6th. And I can't.
Miami 7, Hawks are 8.
And Cleveland's going to be in that 4 or 5
right
game
now.
most likely.
But who?
Cleveland going to be probably 4 or 5. So.
But Chicago's 10th, right? Who's
right.
9th?
Chicago's
The Raptors. Toronto's 9.
Okay,
right.
so Toronto, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago. Okay,
yeah.
That's likely, or Brooklyn if Miami's able to catch Brooklyn. So your play-in is going to be those teams. Obviously, Chicago's going to have to win 2 games, or Atlanta's going to have to win 2 games, or whoever finishes 9th. But you got to worry about that. I think the easiest series would be an Atlanta series, or maybe even Toronto. But it's interesting because the Celtics play Toronto twice next week. And Toronto's not a team that I don't think a lot of teams want to play because they're so damn physical and they're big. Siakam and Scotty, or Anunoby, and now Jakob Poeltl, and then they got Van Vliet and Gary Trent. They've just underachieved all year. They're like Miami. Like what you're getting into now is the first round is teams that will have talent but have essentially underachieved. There's no overachieving teams or no upstart teams. The Bulls have underachieved all year. So have the Heat, so have the Raptors, so have the Hawks, right? So you're going to get one of those teams, and you have to hope you don't catch them when they're playing their best ball. Like in the West, Minnesota's starting to play their best ball, right? That's a team that people are like, okay, now they got Karl Anthony Towns back. Now they're trying to get it together a little bit. Minnesota might be a team that's like, oh, we're gonna take somebody in the first round. We're gonna win. We're gonna pull off an upset. So you're the Celtics. You got to be aware, and that we all know that's an issue now. Like being aware of an opponent you should win, you should beat. But I think the number 2 seeds to see they have to shoot for, and then try to finish it out strong. Finish on a good note. You got I think 1 back-to-back left. Sorry, I think if not 2. But finish it out. Give guys a proper rest if you want, but don't just lay down and lose 5 of your last 7. Play hard, get to the finish line, and then you get a nice long break. The season ends Sunday. You're not going to start the playoffs till Saturday or Sunday of next week, so you get 5 full days off. Obviously practice and stuff, but no games. So get to the finish line. The Celtics cannot let go of the rope at this point.
And to your point, the finish line is very close ahead. Before we get into one of the bigger matchups in the last few games that they have, this is the perfect time for Massachusetts. Listen up. The wait has finally been over for a while now, and FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, is now live in Massachusetts. New customers in Mass can get in on the action with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to players, props, and even more. The thing that we love, we talk about this every week on the A-List podcast, is that you can bet right now on their app. It's safe, it's secure, and super easy to use. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That sounds like a good deal to me. So all you need to do is visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. 21 and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. All right. The big game of the last few. I know the most important game in the season is always the next game, and
no, it's not.
Yes,
that's
it
a
is.
lie.
It
Don't be lying to you, Quan. Don't let coach speak.
I'm gonna feed into the cliches of the NBA.
Lying to you, girl.
So at this time, Thursday night, if you're listening before then, they're going to be able to. The Celtics are playing the Milwaukee Bucks. What do you two make? Because clearly Sherrod already has opinions. What do you make of the value of this game when it comes to the season overall?
Go ahead, Gary. You got this.
I mean, I think it's a very critical and important game. I think you want to send a message to Milwaukee. You don't want them just rolling over you. It's a national TV game. You just want to pick up some confidence. I mean, they look terrible against Washington. They looked disinterested. They looked completely outplayed by Washington's, it wasn't even the B team. It was a B team, but it was no Kuzma and no Bradley Beal. I mean, Dindy Advita had his career high in points. Like, it just didn't stop anybody. It was a terrible performance. It wasn't like, well, they lost by one at the buzzer, or they lost like Washington punched them in the mouth, and the Celtics, it's like they didn't play. It was just, Jalen said about the traffic, and like, why are you so ill prepared for these games? How come you can't guard Kristaps Porzingis like that? How come he looked like a damn Hall of Famer against you? And Vita, who has had an up and down career so far, not been that real piece that the Wizards wanted. How come he just gets to the rim, dunks 3-4 times? Monty Morris, who is a solid NBA guard, no one can stop him from getting to the rim. You got Kendrick Nunn getting in your butt. Like, it was pathetic. So you got to come back. This is just for their confidence to play a good game. National TV, people are like, the Wizards made a big deal about the game. I mean, I think, Washington doesn't have a lot of success, right? They haven't. So when they win games like that, they celebrate it. I mean, I just saw like social media posts, and the Wizards were like, they were just like, oh, we felt as good as we have in months, and this is what winning is like, and we want to shut all those Celtic fans up, that were in the arena and all this. Like, teams still get a kick out of beating the Celtics, and so you just can't come into this game and get rolled over again. Obviously, the Bucks are a better team; they're capable of rolling you over. This is about their heart. This is about their desire. Forget the whole, well, let's rest this person. Like, come out there and play with some guts. Because they didn't play with no guts. They didn't play with no heart. I think that's the one thing that the probably Southern fans are most discouraged about. That team played with no heart on Tuesday. They didn't play with no heart. It's not like they lost to a team that was just really, really good, or they lost to they just played with, it was a heartless performance. They didn't play any defense. I mean, and so you got to respond from that. So I think it's one of their most important games of the season. Regardless, it might not be for the standings. It might not be for the number one seed. Maybe it's already clinched. But you got to go out there and make a statement like, hey, man, that was a slip up.
Is it okay to not play with heart for a game like that?
Huh?
Being honest.
I didn't hear you.
I said, is it not okay to not play with heart for a game like that?
No, I don't think.
In an 82-game season.
I just thought the Celtics are way too casual. Oh, well, it's one of those games. Like, no, it's freaking nearly April. One of those games, which you tired, you had a day off, and you played the Spurs the day before, the game before.
You had 2 days off.
I mean,
that Spurs was the day off.
Tatum didn't play in the Spurs game. Jalen just won Player of the Week. And y'all come out there and put a performance like that where y'all just look like you weren't even interested in being there.
Because they weren't. Let's be honest. Who cares? Not cupcake. I got a cupcake sticker ready.
I mean, I just think that was pathetic. And then, Missoula, well, it's just one of those games. We're just like, why not? You got to review how these guys are being motivated if that's the case. You can't just walk into these games and think these are NBA players, NBA teams. They know what's going on. Watching those half the arenas filled with Celtic fans, they don't want to be embarrassed. Porzingis, when he's playing well, is a really good player. 7'3", can hit threes, can post up. Like, they act like they never had defended him before. It was like he just walked into the floor. Who's this guy? Like, Advita is like a guy who is okay, but you can't let him get 27 points, 5 dunks, or whatever he had. Like, this is embarrassing. You're letting the B team with Kendrick Nunn, you let those guys get in your butt. Like, you can't have that happen. There's a pride element. They play with no pride in that game. And then they, we won games, it just happens. Like, no. And Missoula should be embarrassed for that. That's you, man. That's, and I can blame the players just as much. But Missoula can't just dismiss this one. You know what I'm saying? That team has played, should have beat Milwaukee without Tatum. And I don't even think Brown played that game, right? That game in Milwaukee when it went to overtime. I don't know if Jalen played. But, they've been shorthanded and played harder and with more heart. The game in Cleveland where the Grant missed the free throws, they were shorthanded, but they played hard. And that's, you got to give them credit for that. This one, they didn't play hard. How does professional ball players not play hard? Every now and then, well, it's a back-to-back, the last game of a road trip, we're tired. None of those excuses. One game in D.C. I mean, to me, you got to come out against the Bucks and you got to say something, prove something about yourself. Because people are questioning their heart. And, and you don't want people to question your heart. Question your talent, question the execution at times, but don't question the heart. You don't want that. You don't question your heart. You don't question the heart of Brooklyn. Brooklyn come out there and play hard every night for Dragbon. I'm not saying they're perfect. They're not. But they come out here and play every night. They play hard. Like, can we say that about Joe Mazzulla's team? No, we can't. And as much as I said, I think he's done a great job. This is, you want to know why he's not going to win Coach of the Year? Probably games like this.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Well, first of all, I had to pull out my cupcake early because this is exactly what the Celtics were playing like in Washington, like a flimsy-ass, weak-ass cupcake. And that's inexcusable. They're better than that. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes with a lot of their fan base. If this team was mediocre or average, you can accept games like this because that's you're basically your effort and your talent on that particular night are somewhat aligned when it happens. But this team is too talented to have these type of just, I think, mental and physical letdowns. They were talking about traffic issues. I don't give a damn about the traffic issue. What does that have to do with you giving everyone an easy pass in a lane during a game? Because everyone was getting to the cup at will for Washington with very little, if any, resistance. Porzingis looked like he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, busting them. And that does not happen very often. And so to me, those are the games that remind me that this team still has room to grow in order to be a great team. They're a very good team, but they're not a great team because great teams will play with the type of mental toughness to overcome the fact that they're playing an opponent lesser than them and just handle them the way they're supposed to. I mean, to me, the way they win at San Antonio over the weekend is the way you're supposed to go at Washington. You're supposed to absolutely put them in a stranglehold early and often and don't let up. And they just didn't do that. Now, to Gary's point, Milwaukee is a big game, not only because in terms of what it could do in terms of the standings, but I think you have to start sending subtle but very real messages to teams that you might see down the road. Because if I'm Milwaukee and you got pretty much your full cast ready to roll and we smash y'all after y'all got your asses smashed by Washington, we're going to be feeling pretty confident that all we got to do is just simply play the way we do and we'll beat you. And if you're Boston, at some point, you got to get beyond the standings. You got to get beyond the opponent and make it about you and be great for you. And that, to me, is something that they just don't seem to understand and embrace enough. It's not about so much the standings and moving up. It's about what do you do? How are you going to feel when you walk up that court? Because if you go into Milwaukee and you lose at the buzzer or you lose by 3, but you play a great game, you're good with that. But if you pull a no-show like you did against Washington and you give everyone, you start handing out like easy passes to the lane the way Oprah Winfrey be handing out cars, you are going to be embarrassed. You're going to be screamed off the floor. You're going to be booed off the floor when you get back to Boston because you're probably going to lose a game or two at the crib before the playoffs start. Handle your business. That's all fans want you to do. Handle your business.
Well, you almost convinced me there. I think I might be on board with what you two had to say. That being said, who is your, pun intended, safe bet of the game? Of course, make sure you download FanDuel.com/Boston. Use the app. But who do you two have?
I'm going with Derek White. I think Tatum and Brown are easy no-brainers.
I love how he's developed his confidence, for the record, and he's just owned it.
Derek White has low-key swag that you can absolutely see every time he steps on the floor now. And I didn't think he played particularly well against Washington, but I look at his body of work over the last month, I'd say, since All-Star break, you would say probably after maybe Jaylen Brown, Derek White has been the most consistent player on this team. And when you're getting the kind of production that you're able to get from him at both ends of the floor, because Derek White is one of the best shot blocking guards in the NBA. And his defense overall, I think, has gotten better as he's become more acclimated to what his role is with the Celtics. And we're not even going to talk about his scoring because his scoring is all there. If I'm making a safe bet for someone to play at a high level for the Celtics and position them to win, Derek White's my guy.
I don't know, like the X Factor. You would hope Al comes back and starts playing better. I thought he was non-existent against the Wizards. He missed threes. He didn't guard Porzingis. I'm going to put it on the front court with Al and Robert Williams. Robert Williams wasn't even there last night either.
No.
I mean, that was very disappointing that they had a full squad. I mean, even Peyton played. Peyton gave him a spark in the fourth quarter. They had a full freaking squad, and they still played like a bunch of chumps. So I'm just going to say it's up to Al and Robert Williams. Just, try to slow down Giannis and try to just make a statement. I mean, this is to me, an important game. It's just an important game just to say we are here and we're not going to get – everybody's going to predict that they're not going to make it out of the East now. You've gone from, they're unquestionably the best team in the league. And then obviously Milwaukee goes on that long winning streak. The Celtics stagger after the All-Star break. And now you got people who are like, they're primed for an upset. Don't let them play the Knicks or don't let them play somebody who's, I mean, if it was down now to the Sixers or the Celtics, I'm sure a lot of people pick the Sixers, healthy with Embiid. So, I mean, they got to prove something to themselves. And this whole it doesn't matter what seed we are, we're going to be okay. Like, are you sure you're going to be okay? Like, are you just convinced? Like, I just don't
convince yourself when you say that. Really.
Yeah, I just don't see that swagger from this team. And then Joe's got to take accountability for himself and also call guys out. I'm not talking, rip guys in the media but just the whole no problem. It's like I said, it's like Bill Cosby talking to Theo. Once again, Dad, no problem. When he's trying to get his, he wants to go on his own. Yeah, eaten yet.
Listen, as long as I can wear my Gordon Cottrells, I'm good.
Yeah. He'll live in Jersey. Like, once again, no problem. Like, no, it's a problem. Stop trying to fool the fan base and folks with this, like, hey, nothing to see here. Stop that. It's a problem. You look terrible. You allowed 130 points to a team without its two top scorers. It's a problem. Could you imagine if Beal and Kuzma played in that game? Like, 130 points. They gave up 3 30-plus point quarters. Like, it's just like their defense was not. Why? That's in here. That's not execution. That's execution, but that's also heart and want to and will. And how many times they got to come out against a team that they should be and either mess up the game, cheat the game, like they did against Brooklyn, like they did against Phoenix at home, like they did against Houston, like up 7 with 4 minutes left against Utah, and then they gonna wonder why they're number one seed. Those 4 games get you the number 1 seed. I ain't even talking about the 3 losses to Orlando. Like I'm gonna go by my friend Dwayne Rankin. I ain't even gonna bring that up. I ain't even gonna bring up the 3 losses to Orlando.
He got to know people the damn Suns.
Yes.
None of his business.
Our friend who covers the Suns, who said he brings stuff up. I ain't even gonna bring up the 3 losses to Orlando.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dwayne catching strays ain't even on the podcast.
I love my man Dwayne. That's my dude. But he's right. I ain't even gonna bring that up. I ain't even gonna go into the 3 losses to the Magic. I'm talking about the 4 losses that have just over the last couple of weeks. And this one was probably the most distressing because they just gave up. You followed by 23 points to this team. Like, you let them just run up. You don't even run down the court to catch up to them. You let Monty Morris just take the ball from you in the paint and then run down the court and lay it in. Are you the Globetrotters you're playing? In front of an arena with half of your fans on the road. I got a friend texting me. It's like, man, this is bad. I want my money back. He's a Celtic fan and went to the game. I want my money back.
You're right.
He felt cheated.
Hoodwinked, bamboozled, and
Led
left.
He went to go see, he's a Boston guy. He went to go see his Celtics host against the Atlas Wizards. And what did he see? Like, he got that. So I'm just concerned about the lackadaisical play. I'm concerned about up here. This is not how you want to enter. And there's been teams, you know, we talk about the 2010 Celtics. They were the 4 seed. They were veterans, man. They had already won chip. They were veterans, right? And they beat Dwight Howard. They beat LeBron. They beat a really young D-Wade, not really young, but like a D-Wade who was in his prime. That series, they went nuts, but they still beat the Heat. Like, they took on all comers, all chumps, and they put them down. And they got to the finals, lost in Game 7. But that team had championship. All of them had chips. Even Rashid had a chip. Obviously, KG, Paul, and Ray had chips. Rondo had a chip. Perk had chips. Like, all of them had championship medal. This team don't. So how bad do you want it? Mm-hmm. And then that's all good. We cool. No, man.
No problem, Dad. No problem.
Because you know what they say, folks, Kwani, and when someone says it's all good, it's never all good. Have you ever had someone say to you, it's all good, and it's really all good? Can y'all think about that? Can you think about when someone has always said, what's that they do? It's all good.
Oh, everything's all good, man.
It's all good. No, it's not. It's never all. When someone says to you, it's all good. No, it's all good. No, it's not. You know that's not. So is it all good in Boston?
Maybe not.
It probably is all good, which means it's not all good.
I understand your point. With 6 games left, you do want to set the standard for the playoffs of consistency and lockdown defense. And
I'm trying to buy her championship T-shirts. Like, Kwani,
I understand that, but at the same time, but my point is But the point I'm making is, like, I could also understand from their perspective of it's only 6 games left for them, and it's like, all right, we already secured a playoff. So I don't agree with being lazy. But at the same time, I could understand the perspective of, like, all right, it feels
laying down and not playing hard.
But here's the thing.
Because let's be honest, why put effort into something that you know doesn't?
You pay millions of dollars.
Well, Gary, forget about the money for one second. You are paid not to just. You are in position to significantly improve your lot if you get hot right now. If they were like locked into it, like the 4 or 5 spot or 3 spot, then I could understand why you'd have a game like that.
When you rest guys,
there's not
guys, but they had a full healthy squad. There was a reason why they needed that game. They knew how important it was, or at least management did, or whoever, because everybody was healthy. Tatum, why'd they give Tatum the Spurs game off? If that was the case, they should have gave him the Wizards. They gave Tatum the Spurs game off because they wanted him healthy for this week. That's what they wanted him ready for this week. They needed to give him a break, and it didn't work. How come they brought Peyton back? Because he was healthy. It was a full squad. They didn't lose. They didn't throw out the B team. You didn't see Sam Hauser out there getting schooled. They threw out their A team and got smacked. That's concerning to me. And I'm just saying, in terms of, like, up here, they'll beat Washington 8 times out of 10, especially that team. But they just looked ill prepared. They didn't know how to guard Porzingis.
Right.
Porzingis hit, and then Washington started hitting some really, like, they started out 1 for 6 from 3, then 8 of their next 10. They started billing themselves and how many times have we talked to Joe or heard from Joe? Don't let these youngsters or don't let these guys get confidence, because then they're hard to stop. It's exactly what happened. Corey Kisper's getting in your butt. Like, dudes who just you never heard of unless you're a diehard NBA fan, are on the floor scoring, getting in your, like, you know what I'm saying? Without Kuzma and without Bradley Beal. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that's a concern. And you have to play hard at all times. There's no excuse for not playing hard. Not playing well, there's fatigue, just not having a good night. None of us are perfect. but not playing hard, not giving your best. Because, we number two anyway. Well, then sit and watch, bring up Bufandu and J.E. Davidson and watch. I bet you they play hard.
Bufandu, yeah. Right. No, for real.
I bet you they play hard.
Yeah.
Bring up, use that contract and put DeMarcus Cousins out there. I bet you
he might play hard too, yeah.
Some dude who wants it. I bet you they play hard. Because they didn't need their best in that game. They needed to play hard in that game. And that was the concern.
I'm developing more thoughts, but I'll leave it there.
But go ahead, Kwani. Get your championship.
I'm thinking about, and this is like, honestly, this could be a podcast in itself. It's like the trajectory of greatness, right? And we talk about mental health and physical health. And I'm not making excuses for them for the record. Like, I understand everything the two of you have said. But I think that sometimes, going back to the point about the specific game, I think what bothered me the most was the fact that there's been this roller coaster all season of like one bad game and everyone freaks out. It's like, oh my God, they suck so much. Like, perspective, they're still number 2 in the East. I understand there is always a level of greatness that can be achieved. But I think there's also a level of, as human beings, you're allowed to just be like, you know what? I'm really not bringing it today. I personally think we need a little more of that. And I'm not saying I'm not saying like
the world would be a better place, Kwani.
I'm not saying that. But some days you just have to know when
I get it.
Have it. And also the accountability needs to be there. Because after that game, like you mentioned about Joe, when he wasn't willing to essentially say like we could have done better versus the mentality of what he said, I understand that perspective as well. But I also, again, accountability, if you're willing to be held accountable, like, you know what, it wasn't our best game. We're honestly tired. Be honest. Because honestly, people will appreciate that authenticity versus like putting people on a roller coaster ride of, all right, what is going on? Will they be prepared for the playoffs? Because I understand that fans' concern is more likely, are they ready mentally for the playoffs? Not like, did they really just have an off night and just didn't care about the opponent, which I would understand if that was the case. You didn't respect the opponent enough to care. Sometimes that's the case as well. But Sherrod, you was going to say something.
I was going to chime in and just bring up the fact that you're a professional basketball player at the absolute pinnacle of your profession. Sure. And even on your bad night is better than most people on the best night of their lives in terms of playing basketball. So I absolutely understand that. But your point about accountability, Kwani, is a big part of why the Celtics right now bother me. Because they don't seem to be accountable for the fact that they're underachieving when they underachieve. They chalk it up as just, well, it's just one of those things, not a big deal, nothing to see here. And that's disturbing because when you get to the playoffs, one of the things Joe Mazzulla talks about, and I love when he talks about this because it sounds good, and I wish his players would heed his words. Mm-hmm. He talks about the need to build good habits, good habits. One of the best habits you can build as a human being, whether you are a basketball player or you are a barista, is finding a way to be your best when you're not your best. Finding a way to be effective when you are either in a mental or physical state of being ineffective. Because even when you come up short, the intent is to be better than you are. And that's one of the issues with this group. I don't feel that they're accountable. I don't feel that the intent to be good when they're not playing good is there. That Washington game was a great example for me. They just didn't have it as a team. They just didn't have it. And rather than try to fight through that and just try to be a little more competitive as a group, they just said, we don't have it. We're not going to try to get it tonight. Not going to have it. And then to compound that, you're not accountable for the fact that you basically mailed it in. And that's disturbing because, again, I go back to when Joe talks about building good habits. It's a habit you're building, but it ain't a good one. And it's the kind of habit that could potentially bite you in the ass when you in the most inopportune moment, which is the NBA Finals or the playoffs. Those are some of the issues that disturb me about this. Kwani, what you're talking about, Kwani, I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that. Mm-hmm. But when you get between those lines, you got to find a way to get through that. And when you look at the way that the Celtics build their schedule, they don't practice that much because they want you to get some time to yourself, to mentally and physically recharge. They're literally going out of their way to make sure that you don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that generations of players prior to them had to deal with. In my conversations with Al Horford, I would say 95% of the time when he sits out a game, it's not because he's hurt. It's not because he's sore. It's because they're trying to make sure he's as healthy as possible for the period of the season that matters most to this organization, which is the playoffs. And when your organization is going out of its way to make sure that they're going to, while having a product that isn't as great as it can be, but it's going to preserve you and your body and give you the best chance to be your best when we need you the most. And then you come out and play like you did against Washington when you got the whole crew ready. That's not good, Kwani. That's building habits that you don't want to build.
I got you on that.
I just think like, I understand what you're saying, Kwani. Like, none of us go to work every day at our 100% maximum.
Yeah.
But Kwani, you can't call it sick when that happens. Like, you have to gut it out. There's been days you haven't felt your best, been your best, and you came out and made it a great day. You got to persevere. You got to gut through it. It's not easy. There's times, we all have to go to the arena or go to our respective jobs. We don't feel like it. We're tired. We've got the sniffles. Whatever. Mama calling you about something, you gotta help her. Mama calling you about something and the family's issues, whatever.
Preach, brother Washburn, preach.
And you have to gut it out. And you have to be like, and I think the Celtics' way of gutting it out is, or trying to do something different is, let's shoot more threes. And if they don't go in, oh well. Not diving for loose balls, not getting defensive stops, not playing that grind game. Look at the Warriors last night against the Pelicans. And I'm not, Draymond be going over the top, but they gutted that game out. They looked terrible for the first 2.5 quarters, and then suddenly turned it on, and Draymond, they just gutted it out, and they flipped the game. Or I look at the Bucks, okay? And the Bucks have a championship medal that the Celtics just do not have. I look at their last few losses, okay? They lost at Denver 129-106. They got whooped. That's fine. There's going to be games you get whooped. The Celtics got whooped at Denver. That's nothing to be ashamed of. You just got whooped that one day. Home to Indiana. They lost where Indiana put up 140. They had a bad night, but they still played hard. They lost in overtime at Golden State where Steph went nuts, but Giannis didn't play in that game. Like, I look at the losses. Philadelphia at home, 133-130 when Embiid, like, those are respectable losses, right? They lost at Cleveland without Giannis in January, 114-102. The last loss you look at and you're like, they lost back-to-back games at Miami by 4, and they got blown out without Giannis. And so it's like, you look at the Milwaukee losses, and I'm not saying they're a perfect team, but their losses, especially lately, have not been where it's like, man, y'all didn't even show up that night.
Yeah. Now,
they lost January 1st at Washington at home against the Wizards, but without Giannis. So it's 118-95. That's probably their worst loss of the season. Or the Celtics on Christmas Day. But I'm not saying they're a perfect team. I'm saying their losses are excusable, right? Especially the last few months. You look at those games and you're like, okay, I can see how they lost that game. If the Celtics had lost in overtime to the Wizards, where the Wizards just played out of their minds and the Celtics played hard too, and then that's one thing. They were down 23 points. Like, they were just like, this ain't us tonight. And it's just, you can't throw in the towel in a public, like in a game on TV in front of thousands of fans, throwing in the towel and being like, this ain't it, this ain't us. It just happens too often.
Gotcha.
That can happen occasionally, but the Phoenix game, when Phoenix didn't have Devin Booker, remember that one? The 28-point lead to the Nets. The game at Houston got nothing to play for. The game at Utah played well, but you're up 7, and they just kind of fumbled that game away. And, it's like, you just look at the losses, and there's too many inexcusable losses on the Celtics record. 3 losses to Orlando. Once, okay, I got you. You had Orlando in your house, back-to-back games, and you lost them both, then went to Orlando, and Orlando ain't sniffing the playoffs. And I'm not saying they're not a good, rising, young team, but they're still going a lot back. They still have a sweet reserve. at the Marriott Marquis or wherever they're going to stay for the damn lottery again.
Right.
So you're not losing to a playoff team. So to me, it's just like you got to find a way. We all find a way. We're not perfect, and there's days we don't do as well. And it's okay to lose, Kwani, to me. Mm-hmm. It's not okay to be like, nah. If not, Missoula's got to put players in there that find it. He finally did in the fourth quarter, and they just didn't have enough. They cut it to 12 or whatever. They tried. That was the most discouraging part of this. When other dudes in there, they cut the lead down. They tried. Then you see what happened. And people are watching like, are we going to lose this game? The Celtics had the ball or something like that down 12 with like 4, and they turned the ball over, and then the Wizards hit a 3, and it was like, okay, it's up to 15. That's it. But like, you saw what happened when they put in there and tried. That's the discouraging part. And Tatum and Brown and Smart and bench just sit up there. Well, it's
be like that sometimes.
We would be like that sometimes. Like, at least say, hey, man, we can't. At least just say, hey, we can't let this happen. We can't. This can't happen. That we can't. We can't go out there and show up like this. Like we didn't play well. They played well. We were terrible. Like something where you let the fans know. You're like, hey, we didn't play well, and we know fans. We know Celtic faithful. We know that y'all are disappointed. We're gonna, mentally, like you said, Sherrod, most coaches, especially in the old days, they would have practiced today. Celtics are not practicing. They would have had a 2.5-hour practice after a game like that. Nope, the Celtics are off. Like Sherrod said, get your rest, chill, find whatever restaurant you want to in Milwaukee, relax, watch the other games, whatever you want to do. Mental break, right? You think a lot of teams, especially with them them old school coaches would have been at somebody's gym today practicing.
Well said. I think now we just look forward to that national game on Thursday. Sherrod, you had final thoughts?
No. Gary said it well. Bottom line, the Celtics, this is a game that means significantly more to Boston, I think, than it does Milwaukee. Milwaukee, they know they got the inside track to that top seed, which is essentially what they want. And as we've talked about just kind of sporadically, Giannis is getting some rest. And that's a problem for everyone that they're going to face, because he's going to be as close to being full throttle Giannis as possible. And do the Celtics have enough in the tank if they're able to get to the finish line and see Milwaukee to deal with that? It remains to be seen. But they need to take care of the business that they can control, and finding a way to win in Milwaukee is one of those things that they absolutely have control of.
And of course, Sherrod and Gary are both in Milwaukee. Are y'all in the same hotel room?
Seems like we're not.
Yeah, I was looking at the art earlier. So make sure you follow them for coverage in game, during the game, after the game. Of course, stick with the A-List podcast because it's about to be playoff season, baby. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the sun is shining right now on the melanin. So I'm going to go enjoy that. This has been the A-List podcast. For Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, we'll be back next week. And season's almost over.